Hey guys, let's start.
In times like these, being a citizen is a big job. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the virtues of self-rule and debate the state of our republic. Welcome to the behind-the-scenes episode of the Citizens Prerogative Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Michael Piscitelli, and I'm joined by my illustrious co-host, Raymond Wong Jr. We'll get to hear from him in a bit, but before that, a warning. We feel the need to provide a peek behind the scenes to add another flavor of our perspective. The subject matter from behind the scenes will be more raw and off the cuff and potentially offensive, but we have done our best to mask the worst expletives. Finally, before we begin, a couple of listener notes to address some questions off the bat. Behind the scenes is a side effect of our process. Ray and I record our episodes essentially in one take, with perhaps a few bullets to keep us on track. Prior to each episode, though, we catch up. We talk personal, business, and everything in between, including bathroom life. We spare you those details. I digress. The episode that you're about to hear is cut from the prep time I just described, which is usually completely off the record. At least it had been until now. You will hear references to the South. We intend this to generally refer to the pervasive culture in the times and places leading up to the founding of the Confederacy. After the fall of the Confederacy, the South continues to be used as a reference to subsequent redemption and lost cause propaganda campaigns that eventually pervaded all of the Union. After all, lest we not forget, the Confederates only conceded the war and never denounced their way of life. Instead, they feel maybe more like an exiled people in their own country. This ideology is built upon white supremacy at its core, and it became less geographically centered around the southern states as time wore on and economic models and people shifted away from the plantation. Albeit wherever Black people would go, if not among their own, then racism was sure to follow. You're also going to hear us refer to white people. This is in reference to a cultural identity shared throughout the ages based on a wishy-washy perception of race and who's considered in the club or out of the club. It's not intended to be a reference to anyone's skin color. My skin could be classified as white. Most people do classify it as white. But my Italian immigrant forebearers weren't afforded the same label based on mere perception. Oh, how whiteness has changed with the times. I cannot wait for race to be an artifact of history. Lastly, we're compelled to try something different here. So after listening, let us know what you think by commenting at Citizen Do Good on Facebook or use our Contact Us form at citizendogood.com. In today's episode, we're talking about the events that occurred at the Capitol recently. We're talking about January 6th. We want to talk about it in the context of MAGA and BLM and the Republic, like we usually do. There's also an aside about the nature of reality, as we tend to get caught up in the cutting edge of science and belief. Again, this is raw behind-the-scenes footage or content, and so we're releasing this now as an episode. Some of the discussion may meander a bit, but it's intended to be a little bit different. Without further ado, let us begin. We are now live. Oh boy.
Oh, I didn't know if we were going live. I was going to say
January 10, 2021.
And is it 2021?
Everything in the Republic is different.
Is it 2021? Did we just, I mean, what's funny is my partner and I celebrated, Denzel and I celebrated, and we're like, here's to 2020, it's over, here's to a brand new year. And 2021 kind of came in and said, hey, by the way, in case you forgot, years are a human construct, and really, this isn't over.
Time for history to repeat itself. Prepare yourselves.
Well, the thing is interesting is that we've got two mindsets going here because those individuals thought history would repeat themselves. A lot of people thought it was 1776 again. You've heard
Yeah.
that rhetoric, right? That they were taking back their nation. But I was actually late getting on because I was doing a Facebook Live because I was genuinely feeling grievance about we need to explain why Black Lives Matter is different than MAGA because everyone seems to want to associate the movement, which is real, Black Lives Matter, with the MAGA, which is not real, which is false.
It's lost cause. I mean, MAGA is the remnants of the lost cause propaganda where the South never conceded losing the Civil War. Really, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
that's the crux? We never resolved that dispute.
We stopped. We stopped reconciliation. We pulled the U.S. military out for a deal, and that's the problem. The deals need to stop because guess who's not involved in the deals? The American people. We're
Yep.
never involved in those deals. Who would have thought? Who would have thunk it? But I want to ask you if you kind of saw the same thing. Is that the good news is I need to go close my windows. So did you notice that so we're good news and bad news is the press was on board with calling it an insurrection and calling it invasion, right? I saw from the early on, before we even knew how bad it was, the press had already hyped it up.
Yeah.
But then they couldn't keep control of it, right? Because I personally do not believe that the language necessarily was warranted off the bat. In long term, it is, right? But
yeah, we can't call it what it is until we know what it is.
But they called it an insurrection from like the start.
Yeah, I happened to be watching it. I had it on television as it was
You did.
happening because I was watching the speeches. I was actually watching what was happening because it was being aired. I was on C-SPAN most of the time anyway. Like even if CNN wasn't, I was already watching. And then they cut over and you see, they're covering the protests marching down the street and everything. And then suddenly I'm staring at the screen and I'm thinking of it as they're saying it. I'm like, wait a minute, there's no barricades. There's no security.
You said it too. Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I'm looking at it and it looks exactly like it did when I was there back in 2008 or something, right? It was like there was some construction fencing or something and some trucks, but there was no people anywhere there. And there was this whole group of protesters marching towards that area of the Capitol. And I was like, this is really weird. And I'm looking on C-SPAN and they're in there and they're giving all the speeches on the floor of the House and the Senate. And I'm like, this is not right. This is not right.
Right.
Why on earth is this mob allowed to approach the Capitol like this, totally unrestrained? There was nothing in between them. And then they get up on the steps and everything. And that's when you heard the tone change. It was as soon as they started getting up on the steps, it was then that the talking heads realized something's wrong. Wait a minute. How did they get that close? How did they get that far? It just suddenly struck them as at that point it was something wrong. And then I was like, yeah, hello, you guys. What is this?
I've never been allowed up there. I don't know if you ever made it on the tour, but when I was there was an armed guard with an AK-47 who told me I couldn't step on the steps of my house alone.
Yeah.
I couldn't even ask him a question. I was like, when? And it was a stupid question. When is the tour? But like he's there to guard. But it's still like I just was like, but this is the people's house.
It seemed so even staged to me.
Well, here's the thing.
Not that the protesters were staged, but the fact that they had such unfettered access to the Capitol.
Well, I mean, are there white supremacists in the police force?
The unions
are there people
are all run?
Are undercompensated that want power and have an ego and want an easy outlet to do it where not a lot of people are going to go because it's not well compensated. It's called the police force.
The week or two before this, I just kept thinking, I've been reading all of this stuff about like the Russian Revolution and the Bolsheviks and some other stuff because I was digging into anarchy a little bit more, preparing for upcoming episodes. And I'm like, suddenly I'm seeing this happen. And all I'm thinking of is, oh my gosh, this is a Bolsheviks kind of revolution, or, in the minds of the people that are downtrodden, right? Or, I mean, even it even harkens to off with their heads. I mean, if you just for a moment put your feet in the shoes of those people who are marching on Washington, right? They probably feel like that's where they are in history. And the rest of us are all just horrified. Like, no, 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 you're so confused about what's happening in that, in that Congress right now. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
For the life of me, the when I saw this happening, all I could think is that none of these people have read the Constitution.
No.
I don't think any one of those people in that building know what's going on. They don't understand the Constitution, nor have they're not engaging in deep thought. They're just a bunch
Mm.
of parrots. The hard thing was is that it was almost traumatizing how disorganized their rant was, because you could never hear a coherent message. You could never hear
Oh
one
no.
consistent chant. You could so you
It's
could tell it
all
was
the
so disjointed.
disaffecteds, all
Yeah,
the disaffecteds, and
for
I
their
I hate
micro
to use the
reasons.
term, yeah, for their micro reasons, all
Yeah.
came together because they have a common enemy. That's it. That's the only thing they have in common is this perceived enemy of the state. And in a really sick, twisted psychology of it, it turns out they're the enemy of the state. It's almost like an Inception film or something.
I
They
used to
don't even
think,
know that they're in it.
yeah. Well, what happened? You got to imagine as they went home, or as they finally looked at their phones, and I have to say this. I don't know if you noticed it. I have never seen such a phone obsessed group in my life. Like,
Yeah.
what I saw was the perpetuation of social media manipulation.
Yes.
That lonely
They have
isolationism.
chosen to live in 1984,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Oh,
And the selfie sticks. I've never seen so many selfie sticks in my life. I mean, a revolution I did not know included selfie sticks.
it is so it's gonna be it's so interesting for so many reasons. And we can only take a step back and say that from our philosophical position at this point because it's not burning down,
Mhm.
at least not immediately. At least they played their hand like this whole Trump thing is done. And at the end of the day, in hindsight, history, looking back at 2020 with 2020 vision
Mhm.
and seeing these were test cases because they're so woefully underthought, but the actions are so profound, right? So look at I guess what I'm trying to say is, can you imagine if it was well organized? If everything Trump wanted to do and his supporters wanted to do was actually well organized rather than just this smattering, meandering thing. So the real risk, the real concern is if an organized group was to try and conduct this in a concerted way, they would be quite successful.
Right. Well, I am of the mindset, Michael, that there were organized people, and that the individuals that needed to get into the room couldn't get into the room quick enough, and that,
Yeah.
there was enough of a stopgap. I'm sure.
Well, now that it's demonstrated, right? That's what worries me the most, right? Now the signal is there. Hey,
Yes,
this works.
we pulled it off,
Just pull it
right?
together a little bit
Well,
tighter.
I wonder, and what made me wonder is I think what happened is that the critical mass stopped. I believe that enough people heard the sirens. They knew, right? Because as people we know, the cops don't roar their sirens when you're doing good stuff. So the I think that the people realized, and I'd imagine it was pretty psychological because they brought police in from all regions. So I bet the sirens were going from all these various regions traveling into
Around the
Washington.
Capitol.
So I bet psychologically, most of the MAGA folks that were not there for that, right? The ones that were genuinely there could do the manipulation. I'm not going to say because they had a good grievance. We'll never say that in our organization. It's because they were manipulated into thinking they had just cause. And I'm sure they ran in complete horror. And can you imagine being the individual at that rally and then leaving as the Capitol is basically, how do you know? Is it on fire? Because it looks like it was on fire at one point with the smoke.
Yeah, whatever that, there were some images, they were angled so that it looked like everything was on fire, but I don't know what happened.
Cannons. It was the smoke cannons, not tear
Uh,
gas, right? Because they don't qualify for
no,
tear gas if they're white. But cannons, smoke cannons,
smoke
smoke bombs, the
cannons.
things they sell at ice cream trucks.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there were some fire images outside the Capitol when they're on the stairs. I don't know where that came from, but
Do you
not
think
in the building.
so? What do you think? I mean, I know you and I have discussed very clearly about the media's position in this, and they own it because they've been kind of they've been perpetuating it. But what do you think about this whole impeachment now? Do you think that this is now a red line for those senators and those individuals who decide they are going to perpetuate this contest after what's happened, or is this democracy?
Oh,
And we're not an episode, that's why I ask it here.
yeah. No, I know, because when you look back at history, we have a long history of riots and mobs and, people being very irreverent of the system because of corruption. So it takes a lot of moral platitude to say it's completely wrong. If you have a grievance and you're being ignored, your free speech is being ignored, then logically the next thing that happens, and even MLK and Malcolm X and people talked about it. It's like, well, once your back's against the wall and your voice isn't heard, the only other thing you have to do is leash out. Whether or not that's actually what's happening to these individuals, I think is quite debatable, but they cornered themselves into the perception that that's what's happening. And so they're responding in kind to the perceived, threat. So you can understand it. But what is unique about this is that it's a coming to fruition of something the founders feared that we've never seen successfully conducted to this. McCarthyism was the closest time this country has ever come to social manipulation to the degree that we just saw. And I think the real risk, why this is unique and special and particularly scary and needs to be dealt with in a particular way and not just treated like any insurrection we've seen in the past, is that social media thing. If all you have is a phone, which is quite ubiquitous now, everybody has it. If all you have is a phone and that's all you have because it's cheap and it's your only connection and it's inciting you to believe things that are making you risk your life to take these actions, that seems like a problem. That does not seem like an effective use of our system. And it also doesn't seem like it's just people merely not being heard. So that being said, I think this falls outside of democracy. I think this falls outside of the tenets that, it's nonviolence. As soon as you've gone beyond violence, as soon as you're trespassing and you're destroying property, I mean, we have that very distinct line. So,
A door.
stop being a
I
protest, a door.
I was thinking about, thank you, and because I was thinking about it, like it helped me even deal with it because you and I've spoken about the doorway and the threshold and how that matters so much. So it was a lot easier for me to deal with the violation and what happened because I said, well, we've talked about it. The doorway, our Constitution has invested so much in the property line, which is the door, right? The door.
Yep.
And then when I saw the images of them banging at the door, like just forcing it through, I was like, sorry, I felt that you and I are onto a real cohesive idea here, that this doorway is our fanciful, it's our everyone's Disneyland, right? Everyone has this imaginary doorway, which is so strong, and we all sit in our houses, and the same thing, the government doorway, they were all sitting in there like, oh, this is just what we do, we fight propaganda, you campaign finance dollars, thank you.
Free speech.
It's right, it's a game. And then all of a sudden someone's banging at your door and you realize what it's like to have somebody violating your doorway, and it doesn't happen very often to these elected leaders, right? Not like the
No.
people experience it. But I'm glad you said also that they do have a grievance, because I feel the same way. It's manipulation, they're wrong, it's built on a lie. But if your president, the person you're supposed to trust, tells you it's been stolen, what do you think's going to happen? Now, other part, Mike, is that I feel like the MAGA leaders are not intelligent enough to stage this, right? The president and his leaders, I felt like the language they use, now the press has edited to high hell, right? And it sounds really bad now, but the full speeches, you heard them. They had legalese scattered though, right?
Everywhere,
They weren't
always.
designed for
He's so
this.
good at that.
Yeah.
Every speech he's ever given, all I hear is the caveats, the exceptions, the double speak, the disclaimers. There's
Well,
just disclaimer laden. There's nothing you could take to court.
right. Like, we're going to fight like hell over the next 10 days. We're going to fight like hell. You got to get out there and fight over the next 10 days. I was like, you know what? This is sick. And what they wanted, I think, was a rally, a passionate rally, right? But it got out of control.
Well, and it's the language, it's lost cause propaganda style, because the South, that's Southern gentry. That is the Southern aristocratic means of speaking truth without using true words. Masters of the art of manipulation of speech, because, they didn't have segregation in the South, and they didn't have slavery in the South, and they never had any of those things, right? They were taking care of people who couldn't take care of themselves. And there was all this other way of talking about the truth that, keep the righteous, holy in their righteousness.
And so far, it does not look good for the Southerners, because as the rap sheet comes out, I mean, as people get arrested, it's not looking good for the South.
It's not, is it?
No, but
there's not a lot of people from Chicago in that riot.
I will tell you that Arizona's in there, and I want to be clear that yes, I've been responding. My public response to people is yes, we are a battleground state. So that's all I say to anyone.
And that's right.
Arizona, huh? Because everyone wants to wash away our blue. Don't you dare. We are part of the blue club now. You can't kick us out.
Nope.
Don't you call me purple after this election.
You are now in the blue. But yeah, I mean, what is that now? I'm seeing the Maricopa County Republican Party is censuring Cindy McCain and several other moderate Republicans. Have you seen that today?
Oh, no, I haven't. I wish I cared more, but because it's so hijacked, right? The Arizona.
Oh, I know. As soon as I saw
they don't do anything. The local they usually
so this is the
off
San Diego
anything.
party. I feel like Maricopa County and Riverside County parties, I mean, they almost share a border. Yuma's the only one in between, right? I forget what county is in between. There's only one. They're of the same. And it's like this anti-Hispanic Southern border group of whites or something, right? Because there's a coalition of them.
Yeah, whites. It's this ideal that the America they have will change if they allow these outsiders to come in.
But they're coming to join this constitution, this set of laws, this self-rule. If we all played by the same rules, what do you have to be afraid of? This is what's so interesting.
That's the problem, the pay-to-play system, right? So as these individuals move in and they build their own businesses in a shitty burnout building, right? But they still build a business. They might even
be better at it than
and
the
they're
white
better
people.
at it. And that's the risk, right? You don't want the competition.
Yeah, you don't want fair competition. You never
had it.
Cheers
to competition, really quick. Let's do cheers to freedom and cheers to cheers to the revolution. Because here's the thing I'm saying to people too. All my friends who doubted me on the revolution. Oh, do you believe me yet? Do you believe me? We're on the good side, though. I believe we're on the good side after what I saw.
We're on the side of the union.
Cheers. That was the longest cheers ever.
Cheers to the union.
To the union.
It's time to put down the Confederacy once and for all. I was very glad to hear Merrick Garland, although he doesn't get to be a Supreme Court justice, is going to be head of the Justice Department. And it was really not yet, but really good to, I know, right, all the confirmations. Hear them bring it back to the history of the founding of the Justice Department and why the Justice Department was founded. And it was I sum it up as, our government created the Justice Department to protect newly elected Black congressmen as they transited from Washington, D.C. and their home states in the South. It was set up to fight the KKK. So after we had the elections after the Civil War, and we started southern states, especially South Carolina, because their whole legislature, their whole system of government went black basically after the Civil War, because there were so many black people in South Carolina. But a lot of southern states had a lot of black elected officials, and that, the backlash to that was the rise of the KKK, because we disenfranchised all of the former southern slaveholders of their property. And so they established the KKK, their own, seasoned whatever internal police force, which we can talk about. Behind the Bastards is a great podcast. They did a series that traces all the police unions and the training programs and a lot of that stuff back to the KKK groups that got disbanded back in the day. But ultimately, Justice Department was there to fight the KKK, to protect black representatives in Congress. And so they kind of brought it up. They brought it up when they were talking about his, whatever it is when you nominate somebody to a position. And I was like, thank you. Yes, please remind people what the purpose of the Justice Department was when it was born.
Now I'm crying. I didn't expect to. Oh, I thought I was going to cry today talking to you, but it is nice always to talk to you because I continually learn things from you. And thankfully you and I are just equally different enough that we find different spectrums of everything. Because I didn't even know that. It's brought tears to my eyes, and
it gives me chills. I mean, it gives me chills right now. Every time I think about it, when I learned it the first time, it was hard.
When did you learn it? Where did you learn
it? One of two PBS series. It's either Many Rivers to Cross, or it was America Post Reconstruction.
I was waiting for school to be shocked, but it didn't happen. Sorry.
Oh, no. Actually, no, I will give
the system.
Yeah. And for school, San Francisco. Yeah, well,
okay,
no. San Francisco Community College helped me understand a lot more about Native heritage. In the Americas.
I'd hope so.
Credit for that. And then
because they took that land from them.
Yes, exactly. This is a part of our history, and thankfully the progressives were here to try and unearth the real history. And boy, it feels real when you learn about it. It makes a lot of sense, and that's how when
Beautiful.
History makes sense, because it actually helps connect some dots. It fills in some blanks. It explains a little bit behind the motivations that you didn't understand before. But if you're learning history and it doesn't do that, it's probably not true.
I'm just glad to hear that yours goes that far, because ours does not. Arizona has.
This is college, though.
But Arizona in general, you would imagine we have a huge Native American influence.
Yes.
And we don't push down. We don't. So we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it in our institutions. And so we've been talking about that. Like, I've been pressing that we will go down a level. And everyone was shocked. What? I said, we will go up. We will start to tell the story of the transition of the cities.
We weren't the first peoples to occupy this land.
Right. Let's go down and see what's under, because Phoenix was founded on, I think, a Native American village that had burned to the ground, and nobody talks about why it burned to the ground, which I'm sure the whites had something to do with it,
because they didn't have sprinklers.
Well, when your building reaches a certain height and certain width, that's what happened. Oh my God, when Arizona, you lived here. Do you remember when they started putting sprinklers in people's buildings and houses and stuff? And and they were just like, I can't believe it. It's so ugly. My house. I was like, well, your house is gigantic, and people don't want to die.
No.
But it was Arizona so backwards. They were like, sprinklers.
Yeah, and there's no fire escapes or anything. It's like, if you're on a second or third floor of a house, like, well, good luck. Hopefully there's a pool.
People have asked about that. What about the fire escapes? Like, what if the building's on fire? I'm like, you go inside the stairwell, but what if the building's on fire? You go inside the stairwell.
Yeah.
What if the stairwell's on fire? There's two. By regulation. Those stairwells can be on fire and they're fine. They can burn for like an hour or something.
I mean, ours are San Francisco's sky rises are the same. I think there's only two.
What can you bear? I mean, I say with a great compromise anywhere, how many can we ask the builder to put in, honestly?
Exactly. Yeah. The profit's the problem. It's it's not
Well,
that,
not
two
anymore.
is sufficient.
Not anymore. With 3D printing technology, if everybody leans into it and these old construction companies let go and lean in, and concrete companies let go and lean in really heavily, we could really convert. But it's slow. They like slow because there's a lot of money made on labor.
Yeah.
I think labor's
Inventory's
where
there.
most of the income is, right? For the company.
Income?
The labor. I think for construction, the cost is not typically your material. It's the labor is your highest expense.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree, because you don't get a discount on labor in bulk.
So so the construction company makes money off of labor, so they are profiting from slower
You're right.
construction.
That's where their margin. That's where they get to squeeze the margin out of.
Yeah, it's like
the
we know
people.
they took away our overdraft fees. We get it. It's unfair. They took away our overdraft fees. We get it. Okay, we invented the debit card and then feed everyone for it. But that's just the way it works. Dodd-Frank, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, profit to a point.
I think it was reasonable. I think some key companies were reasonable, but it was interesting because Nevada had a law that said that transactions had to post, smallest to largest. So it had to post in that specific order. It was really interesting to me when we were retooling that stuff. We were like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh, there's a more conservative state law over here. Does that mean we have to do all the accounts this way? How about no? We'll just carve a little niche just for Nevada for the moment.
are you kidding me? And it makes sense because
And that's a
Nevada
policy
is a place,
exception.
well, I imagine that what other place would people be towing the line on their checking accounts than in Nevada? But that's also kind of disgusting because if I think about it, well, that meant that the lawmakers just needed their people to be able to keep putting their money into the casino machines and not into the bank's overdraft fees. So it's like it was actually, I thought it was
right.
a
As long
good
as your
law.
casino withdrawal was less than your mortgage payment, you could keep gambling.
Yeah. No, stop. I can't. I just can't. No, I thought it was good and then it turned evil again. This podcast does not rest. By the way, this is a back office background,
behind the scenes
content. Now I say it almost on habit.
Now I want to make a banner out of that. Back this, back that. It's back behind everything.
It's background.
If you've got a phrase for behind, we're going to use it.
It's behind. Maybe if I sing it, then it'll work. It'll stick. Okay. Cheers
you wait.
to freedom.
You will see.
Just you wait. Hold on. Alexander Hamilton. My name is Alexander Hamilton. And there's a million things I haven't done. Just you wait. Just you wait. You know what? And Denzel, did I tell you, I probably already said it on the show, but he tells me I don't have to try to sing like Lin-Manuel. He's like, you just sound like him. You don't have to try. And I was like, oh, thank you.
Take it as a compliment. Now I got to go watch it. Now I got to watch it because I've never seen the original still.
Well, you haven't seen Lin-Manuel Conjugi? No, that's the good one. That was actually one of your assignments. So I feel bad. I feel bad for not completing my bio for 12 years. I won't until you watch Alexander Spamilton.
Yeah. I only saw the stage one here.
You have to
different
be
people.
Oh, no, Michael Piscitelli Jr.
I know. I've never seen the original.
They're beautiful men too.
Okay.
They're beautiful men that can sing. They have talent. Their talent is really good. So they are like, and you have to, and you'll understand why I'm inspired by the Alexander Hamilton and Lin-Manuel Miranda himself, because he wrote that play, and I'm sure it's because no one would have given him a shot. I think he sees himself in it. I think I see myself in him, and that ideal that no one's going to give him a shot because of his awkwardness, his voice, his who he is as a person, because there's all this box we all have to fit in for the media system, right? For the process to work, you have to look a certain way because we want the brown people to feel bad. Whatever the mission is. I don't know what the mission is at the Murdochs. I think it's
they want everybody to know their place.
Know your place. I like that.
Know
your placeism. But you've got to see Lin-Manuel because he is so awkward, and I sing just like him. So, anyways, I'll preach less.
That'll be my. I'll take that homework away. I've been watching.
And you said you're Aaron
Disney.
Burr, the person who shot me. And I think once you see him sing, you're someone else, because I don't think you're the person who spends your whole life challenging me and not working with me. Because Aaron Burr declined to work with Alexander Hamilton. So
I don't think about them. I don't think about them as individuals. I think about them as representing groups of people with certain ideas.
Makes sense. Yeah.
That's the only way I can shoehorn myself into it. Otherwise,
Tell me.
I think the king. I love the king. I identify with the king. I feel like this objective observer of some experiment that could go horribly wrong. Like, I was laughing. Like, I don't know. I was texting with Danielle and I was like, well, this is what Congress deserves. How did they leave themselves so unprotected? How did they have so much hubris? This safety theory that they just thought was some unfettered reality. I mean, half of me was overjoyed with this wake-up call. The other half was just horrified. Right? But so
okay,
I love the
I am
king.
willing to do this again, like if you want to. So I think we need to put just like
we'll do the reaction film. Should we do
reaction
watch it?
film of that? That's good, but I also think we should. The reaction film would actually be really good. I'm down right now. But of the I think the song, and I'd be willing to sing it because I like singing it. You can sing it. But what if you did the Capitol riots, not the violent parts, but just with that song dubbed over it?
Oh my God.
Think about it.
It would be so great. Just you wait. You'll see.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as you think it'll be.
Yeah. And we'll say, because you can, I just think it's something to consider so we can mull over it for a couple of days because it still needs to settle. The dust is still a little hot. But yes, I think it's important that I want it to become a
mantra. This is something I don't want us to forget as long as we're alive.
So we need to demonstrate how important it is and how we can tie it back to our history. But you're absolutely right. And so let me pull this back. The only reason I'm not pushing back at you on the king thing is because you are the antagonist. You, and I've always called you British. Yes. Our whole lives, like since we were teenagers.
You've always ignored my Italian nature.
I was like, you're not Italian, you're British.
You're British. Well, that makes sense because you're British.
You would always say, you're like, my skin is, I don't have a tan. I'm like, well, you're of British lineage. I think I've pushed back on your whole life. So for you to say the king, I was like, first off, I was mad, but then I pulled back and I was glad because you finally accepted your British heritage.
But it's, and there's only like 13% of it, but it's in there.
But you do have that. Well, believe me, the royals too. So
that's true.
Great German lineage, I think, right now, the Grand Line. So if you think about you have always been the person of I think you believe in institutions, you believe in the place, and you're about the organization, you're about structure. I think you are very kingly.
And testing it. I want to see the code.
The king.
How's
we
the
still
code
have to do the
perform?
reaction video though.
Yeah, we'll do
that means you haven't seen the real king.
I have not.
You fool. And I'm using a kingly term. Fool.
You fool. You don't know.
Hold on. You'll be back. Time will tell. I mean, the king is really good in the original.
Okay.
No. So he listen to me, you little Michael Piscitelli, you MVP, most valuable person that does not watch that video. He is he came back just to do the movie. So when they filmed it in 2015, and Disney didn't release it till now. So Disney filmed it in 2015, but the King guy came back just to do his part. So he was
because they wanted the whole original
they
cast.
wanted the whole, and it's and you can tell he's really, and he's gone now, and he won't be back.
Oh,
But time will tell. We'll remember that he served us well.
yeah.
You've got to, I think that, so the beauty of life, the beauty of plenty is taking in many things, right? A cornucopia is in front of you, which is the country. And you have all these sources, you have all these resources, you have all these friends, you have all these connections, but we don't want to use it, right? Like the cell phone industry has got you obsessed with the answers right there. And I blame certain people in my life who tried to manipulate me and tell me Google has all the answers.
Ooh.
Because I always went to my dear friend, I won't mention his name, we'll call him Pikel Liscalelli. And I would be like, hey, this question, Google has all the answers. Well, thank you, Michael. My dependency on the internet Michael.
Cemented.
Thank you, Michael. You ruined me for I'll give you at least a couple of years. Thanks. Because I would tell other people, don't talk to me. I'm not a human being. Google has all the answers.
Well, it contains a plethora of facts provided you have a poop sifter, and facts are what you're hunting. Your truffle mushrooms are facts. But if you're looking for candy, there's a ton of that in the store too. And if you don't know what a truffle is, you little piggy, from a piece of candy, then we get in trouble. And not you, I mean, generally. And, that was the problem, right? That was the big issue is, well, unfortunately, Google's a big trough. There's a lot of bad stuff in it.
I'm here to admit right now that I am willing to be a truffle pig for the people. I am a truffle pig for the people. That's the hashtag. What is the hashtag? Truffle pig for the people.
We are truffle pigs for the people. We need to do the t-shirt. Let's get it out there.
Truffle pig. Oh my God, that's beautiful.
It is.
Truffle pig, and then a little pig icon on the back.
Uh-huh. And we got to ask Serge, like, what's the imagery? Like, what's the truffle pig getting up? What's the truffle?
I want you to throw it out to him raw and see how he, what does he do with it?
Liberty? Is it?
Tell him that I need his big, beautiful mind on it.
That it is. Well, it's time for my perennial break.
Perennial? That makes it sound like it only happens annually.
It happens.
What is perennial? That is perpetuates?
I think perennial. Oh, yeah. Perennial. I thought it was many times a year, multiple times a year.
I thought it's annually. It's spring.
Annuals. There's perennials and annuals.
Really?
And I thought annuals were the bulb, like tulip flowers that only bloom once. What's the word for the single bloomers?
Death.
Because I think it's annuals. No, annuals bloom once a year, like a rose.
We don't have any botanists.
I don't know. I have to look it up. This is where I would go to Google because I'd look for perennial definition.
No, stop, because then they're going to start. You're going to advertisements for flowers.
Sorry. Oops. It's going to, oh my gosh.
Happy New Year's if you're still celebrating, although I don't know how anyone can celebrate after the events we've had over the last 10. It's hard to believe that it's the 10th. Because I just was shocked. I just looked down and I can't believe it's the 10th because so much has happened. It's almost weird. I think that actually it feels like the year hasn't even started, that it's not 2021 yet. So it isn't in some ancient cultures. It's not 2021 yet. So
what did who was it? Eddie Izzard who was talking about how the Christians won? I mean, the fact that you're saying 2021 is an indication that the Christians won.
Well, yeah, he said. Well, he didn't say it so directly because he didn't want to riot, because he said it in America. I think the joke, but No, what is he says? He says the calendar. He said
Yeah, the
what happened?
fact
What
that
happened in the fact that the
everyone in the
calendar.
world agrees that this is the year 2021, which is exactly supposedly 2021 years since the death of Jesus Christ, tells you the whole world order was built on Christianity.
I
Oh,
think
how
I think
crazy.
his specific commentary was he says, what happened? He says the calendar people, and the calendar people, what happened when the years were counting down? They're counting down when they hit zero. Like, what happens when we hit zero? Is it year pla? Is it year Kumba Doomba? Is it year Flumpta? Like, what do we do? And he said, so they decided. So it's just really silly. There was
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, it's just like much of the things I try to remind people. Um, we invented that. That wasn't the universe didn't serve that up for us. Yet again, something else. Because we were talking about pronouns the other day. And I was like,
Ooh,
well, pronouns don't actually exist.
yeah.
We're humans with different anatomical parts. So the difference between us is, well, the parts specifically that are
Yeah.
different, not a woman versus a man. That's like a whole being different. And we're not. We're the same species. And they like, whoa, we use those words to describe other animals in nature. I'm like, yeah, the point of that is we use those words. We invented those words to describe things in nature. And guess what we are? Things in nature.
People are. I can't believe it's. I mean, it's probably got to be very circular having those arguments with some people. Because what happens is you deal with people's grandiose idea. I remember I had a boss one time that just couldn't get over it. He took me out to dinner, which I don't think it's appropriate to talk to your employee about it, but I was gay and single. He probably thought he knew better than I. And he said, oh, do you believe in religion? And I said, no. I told him my stance. And he said, oh, I just don't understand how, we can create art, and we've created all these beautiful things, and we've done all this, and it's not something special. And I was like, I told him, I said, it's not anything special. We're just a beast that got it right. We're just the beasts that won the war. But creation and the beauty, I'm like, yeah, we did it. Yay. We won.
Yeah, we're 1 times more complex than crows mentally.
Yeah, that's it. And we can't even
That's all it
fathom.
takes. It's
And a
just
lot of people can't fathom it still, because look how easily the riots have shown us.
yeah.
I'm not going to call it an insurrection. I think it was genuinely a riot. But the news media will take care of it for me. I have no control over what the media does with it. But it depends on where you go, right? Because have you tuned in at Fox? I'm
The
hearing
thing is
Fox is
the
different
thing is well, no, Fox is only focused. They're
on
not
their
focused on.
mission.
Yeah, they're only focused on the deplatforming, the censorship. The only thing they're focused on right now is the fact that people are being canceled from social media. They're not talking anything about the Capitol
It's not
or
free
anything
speech.
that happened.
God, you and I haven't even broached on that yet. The
No.
fact that the ban,
Season 2 Republic tuna.
use the force.
I think the dark energy that suspends our consciousness is probably pretty close on the hard drive.
This episode, it's really deep. Hold on, just give me a second.
The the dark energy where our consciousness lives, it's currently suspended right now by our brain. But when we
Okay,
die, it'll recede back into dark energy. That's why there's more of that than everything else in the universe.
because that lifts out of us and goes back to that dark
The
energy
source.
mass.
Yeah.
So right now there is dark energy in you. What part of your body is it in you, Michael?
It's the electrical activity in the
So
brain.
it's everywhere.
It's in the nervous system primarily. The nervous
So
system
the
is the
electrons that are
organ.
running through the brain and the nervous tract. Because what I thought was really interesting is that the brain and just the nervous tract looks like a giant semen. Have you ever looked at that before?
Yeah, I can see that. Or a jellyfish without a big
No,
head.
no, it's not. Jellyfish is weird.
It's much more of a semen, yeah.
Just if look at an image
Oh,
where
with
they
all the phalanges, like if it had multiple phalange
You're
or
gross.
whatever.
Yeah, I hate the word phalanges. But the
The tails, if it had many tails.
if you look at it, no, if someone pulled it out and then laid it out. And even with the little the tentacles, I guess, for the nerve endings, the core of the just the brain, the only thing that is us, because the body, like the organs, everything, none of that is us. The
Not the
only thing that
consciousness
is
part.
us,
Yeah, you're talking
right,
about the consciousness, yeah.
it's just that brain and the stem, and
Mm-hmm.
it looks like a giant sperm.
Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah, and not even not even all of the nerves, right? You're not counting the nerves.
they had the nerves in it, but even with the nerves, you still see the defined
Mm-hmm.
semen. I mean that's what it looks like to me. Just it
Yeah,
just grew. It just grew all these extra appendages to support itself. But they what they did is they laid it out, and it was just that the brain and then the stem and the nerves, and it was like that is you, that is you, that's it.
it is. Yeah, that's how you perceive the reality. That's the interface. That is the interface that converts all of your sensors' electrical signals into what you experience, right? Because your eyes see light, your brain doesn't see light. What it sees is electrical signals. So your eye turns it into electrical signals, puts it on the high speed bus. That's your nervous system, and sends it in. So that's I hadn't actually I
And
thought
then
about those things
Stardust.
separately, but yeah, I hadn't thought about the
Stardust
nervous
brings you
system.
in, right?
Hmm.
Then it Stardust then connects you to the system. You join the system, and I like that. You get your dark energy, right? You pick up these waves that
The
are pushing
consciousness, the
things.
source of consciousness, because there's this otherness to consciousness. I mean, the only reason why this struck me is because you were bringing up the fact that you and I tend to have a sense of where we're going to go for a lot of reasons. But, we weren't, we're not twins, that's for sure.
Oh goodness,
So,
mine, no,
so
you're
it's
not British.
interesting to think, and people, oh, reincarnation, so if you take all of these things with a grain of salt, it kind of points to the fact that,
Possible.
well, yeah, it's possible. It's suspended somewhere. We know equals MC square is true, essentially from our perception.
Yeah.
Um, we know it's only energy, and the biggest thing we've discovered in the universe that we know nothing about is dark energy and dark matter,
I
if it
talk
exists.
about how religious you are all the time on my Facebook Live. I'm like, oh, if you want religion, go to my friend. Like, this is not the Facebook Live to come to for religion. Like, go to my friend Mike. I tell people on the Facebook Live all the time, I know I'm an extremist. I know what I said was really intense. If you, Michael is a nice dam. Michael Piscitelli Dam holds back the Raymond Wongers waters very well.
Hmm.
But
That's
the religion thing, but you're starting to give me stuff I can actually subscribe to now. That makes sense to me. And because we are Stardust, it behooves me to believe that we can be connected to something. And that means everybody gets a shot, right? The dark matter can come to be anything in that sense. If I'm going to join you in this high thought,
all
that means that
animals that
all living things, trees, right?
trees.
For this moment, it has its dark matter, has its existence, and eventually it'll leave and it'll say, "What a run! That was 1,000 years. I was good, but everyone burned
Yeah,
me down."
that
Whatever. Who knows?
that animistic tradition of the natives and everything, that everything has a spirit, where that's intuitive.
And if you're gay, you have two spirits. That's what the natives said.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, the Native
Oh,
Americans
because
and the
we have
Navajos,
both
they
the
said,
male and the female energy, or
yes, you crave both. So you obviously have a man and a woman in you.
you've lived many different lifetimes.
But you know what? They bring it up with a native shaman. I'm not an expert. We're
No, no,
fact checkers. We'll accept native
I'm not
shamans
either, and I've not
as fact
heard.
checkers.
I have yet. I mean, maybe I haven't been listening to the right circles. Maybe Sam Harris, somebody's maybe already kind of alluding to these things, but I don't know how many people are like trying to, connect those dots. But
Okay, I'm giving you
science, it
credit
takes
though. Like I feel
science.
like
Science
I've
will
been
have to answer it someday, right? It's
I've been
not.
pushing you. Science will not answer it because subscribe to the belief that if we understand our own brains and our existence, that we will destroy ourselves. So, and it's not possible. Like we are not. The
Oh,
universe is too great,
yeah.
right,
We
for
don't. We
us
don't
to
have.
comprehend.
We don't have the capacity to
Like we're
really.
not. No, no way. Not
Yeah.
now. Maybe in time, long time, and the robots will figure it out and kill us. But because that's the problem. If they figure it out, we should be really worried. They're like, "You fools," and they'll be like,
It's hard
"Dude,
to understand space-time when you're stuck to it, when you're like in it.
you're going to lose.
You're gonna
You're gonna
lose.
end. You when you only got 100 years,
Yeah.
if you're lucky."
Yeah. Yeah. I was reading something or I was listening to somebody bring that point up quite matter of factly. Like, well, what we're going to discover about reality is that we can't ever possibly understand it. Like, to the degree of a fact that we would want to, not without some, oh, you know what it was? All right. So it's a great podcast that at some point I want to talk about, but
Okay.
it's called Future Hindsight. And they were talking about um AI may have the capacity, especially quantum AI based on quantum computing
Mhm.
technology, may develop the capacity to actually answer some of these questions. However, the likelihood we will understand it is minuscule to none because we just won't have the capacity to wrap our head around it. And I thought that was fascinating. Like if our only way to really understand the universe is to invent a technology that has to do it for us, and that's generally how we've culturally circumnavigated evolution. That's
Mhm.
how we've left the earth, right? Is we've developed an instrument that helps turn information into a way that's accessible to us. And
And to
so
accomplish feats we could never do
never.
by ourselves. So we cannot break gravity without the support of immense firepower. And that is the limitation of human and man. And so the same thing, this technology, that makes complete sense to me. Because our current physical technology has exceeded our abilities, our ability to drive across the nation, and our ability to survive in harsh climates.
Mhm.
Our physical prowess is not a prowess. It's technological now,
No,
right?
and the
So
more of us is replicated or even invented in a way that's unnatural online, which is the scariest part about AI, is it's going to be introduced to ideas about us that don't even exist in nature. But um, the ability to access that information, recall it, and use it at the speed and accuracy that an algorithm can do it is already way beyond us.
has been
Has been.
any Excel macro that I've been using for like two like over a decade. It's
Yeah.
just like it's crazy to me.
The capacity. And now imagine if it could think for itself, if it could build its own rules, solve its own problems. That's where they're going. That's where these machines are going with machine learning. And right now they're only limited by their physical capacity, and that's what quantum computing is going to help alleviate. And I use the word alleviate when I should say unleash. It's going to unleash this
Unleash,
thing.
unleash.
Alleviating the barriers is unleashing something we really don't understand.
We have to
You were
be,
talking about those chat bots, right? A while ago
yeah.
in one of those episodes.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like rudimentary. That's like, you know, Homo habilis or plesiadiform tree climbing critter type operation compared to what these things are going to be capable of. China probably already has them. Who knows? We won't know
you
for a
think China would
while.
do it? I would think China's concerned because they can't control it.
Oh, I think Chinese people will do it.
Ah,
Will the Communist Party be online with it? No.
so you think that the
That
people are already doing it,
Yeah, because I mean, I think that the cloning experiment showed us
but they
the
have a huge underground
the
or
fact that there's
unhinged
just too many
local
people.
governments.
I
Yeah.
mean, they
Well,
have a big
the
control
variable
apparatus, but the
two
counter to it is so strong.
billion. When you hit 2 billion, I think you'd say it's critical mass, right? You can't.
Yeah.
You're gonna,
How
and it's unfortunate because 1%, because we have the issues too. We have 1%, but 1% of 2 billion is
2 billion,
quite a
a
bit.
large number of individuals with the freedom to create AI or clone
You're
or
absolutely
do
right.
whatever they want.
It's just bigger.
What's the state going to do? And there's a strong interest to work against the state there. So
Well, we got to be ready for them, and that's why the United States has to be organized, and the people need to be organized. I think that's why I think our podcast is important, because the getting people to realize and wake up and see that there is a very clear fight in front of you. You're mad for all the wrong reasons today.
And that's a wrap. Ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between, thank you for listening to this first behind-the-scenes episode. For more information on this and other episodes, head over to citizendogood.com and click on Podcast. While you're there, hit up our Contact Us page and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from the community. Intro music sampled from OK Class by Ozzy Jock under Creative Commons license through freemusicarchive.org. Other music provided royalty-free through Piscitelli Studios.